Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Indonesian Horror Files. I'm your narrator, Daniel. Before we dive into tonight's stories, I just want to say up front, some of the concepts and tragedies we're going to cover are extremely heavy. We're talking about real historical events, real victims, and spirits that still linger because their stories were never finished. So please, viewer discretion is strongly advised. You know, I've spent a fair amount of time in Jakarta over the years, and honestly, I love that city. I love the chaos of it, the way the streets pulse with life at every hour, the smell of street food mixing with exhaust fumes and tropical rain. I have this routine whenever I'm there. I always end up in Cawang around sunset, stuck in that infamous traffic, windows down buying bakso from the cart vendors who weave between the cars. There's something almost meditative about it. The honking, the heat, the slow crawl forward. It's Jakarta in its purest form. But here's the thing about sitting in Cawang traffic. You have a lot of time to look around. And if you've ever been there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Because rising above the gridlock, towering over the overpasses and the billboards, is this structure. This enormous, white, Roman-style skyscraper, 28 stories tall, columns running up the sides like something out of ancient Rome. Except it's not ancient. It's modern. Or at least, it was supposed to be. It's called Menara Saidah. And every single person stuck in that traffic has stared up at it. At least once. Because you can't help it. It's impossible to ignore. Not just because of its size, but because of the way it stands there. Slanted. Empty. Silent. Like a grave that forgot to lie down. I've looked up at that building more times than I can count. And every time, I get this feeling in my chest. This tightness. Like the building is looking back. Tonight, I want to tell you why. We're going to talk about Menara Saidah and the woman in red who refuses to let it rest. And then we're heading to Mall Klender, a place that should be filled with laughter and families, but instead echoes with the screams of 400 souls who never found the exit. So, turn down the lights. Get comfortable. And let's begin. Let me paint the picture for you properly. It's 2007. You're a young professional in Jakarta. You've just signed a lease for office space in a brand new skyscraper. Menara Saidah. It's sleek. It's modern. It's expensive. You're proud. This is a step up. Your company is growing. You're moving into a building with marble floors, high ceilings, and a view of the entire city. The first day, you walk into the lobby, and it's pristine. The elevator doors are polished steel. The air smells like fresh paint and new carpet. You press the button for the 18th floor, where your office is. The elevator hums. The doors close. And then you hear it. A faint ding. You look at the panel. The elevator is moving, but you didn't press any buttons yet. The numbers light up one by one. 1. Tanah Sangar. 3. But then it skips. It goes from 13 to 14. You pause. You press the button for 18 again, thinking maybe you missed it. But the elevator doesn't stop. It keeps rising. 14. And then the doors open. You're staring into total darkness. Not like the lights are off. Not like it's dim. I mean void. A blackness so thick you can't see 2 feet in front of you. The air that rushes in is cold, damp. It smells like wet concrete and something else. Something metallic and old, like rust or blood that's dried into the walls. You hold your breath. You don't step out. You reach forward and frantically press the close door button. The door slides shut. The elevator jerks upward. You reach your floor, step out, and your hands are shaking. Later, you ask the building manager about the 14th floor. He looks at you confused. There's no 14th floor, he says. We skipped it. Superstition. It goes from 13 to 15. But you were there. You saw the number light up. You saw the doors open. You smelled that air. And then you start hearing the stories. Security guards on the night shift had a rule. Never look up at the building after midnight. Just don't. But rules are made to be broken, right? Especially when you're bored. When it's 2 a.m. and you're sitting in a booth at the base of a 28-story tower with nothing but the hum of the streetlights and the distant rumble of late-night traffic to keep you company. One guard, let's call him Booty, told his story to a local paranormal blog a few years after he quit. He said it started on his third week on the job. He was doing a routine walk around the perimeter. The building was completely empty by then. Not a single tenant left. The floors were dark, but Booty had his flashlight, his walkie-talkie, and his thermos of coffee. He felt fine until he looked up. On the 27th floor, in one of the corner windows, there was a woman standing. She was wearing a red kebaya, a traditional Indonesian dress. Her hair was long, black, hanging loose past her shoulders, and she was perfectly still, not leaning against the glass, not moving, just standing there, staring down. At first, Booty thought maybe it was a mannequin. Maybe someone left something behind when they moved out. But then he thought, why would there be a mannequin in an empty building? And why would it be dressed like that? He went inside, took the elevator up to the 27th floor. He had to check. The doors opened. The floor was pitch black, except for his flashlight beam. He walked to the corner office, the one where he'd seen the figure. The door was locked. He pressed his face to the glass. Empty. Just dust and old desks. He went back downstairs, stepped outside, looked up again. She was still there. Same window. Same position, but now he could see her face more clearly in the moonlight. She was smiling. Booty quit 3 days later. He said he saw her 2 more times after that. Both times at 2 a.m. Both times in a different window. And on the third night, when he locked eyes with her from the street below, he swears that she pressed her hand against the glass, like she was waving or reaching. He refused to say anything more after that. Just packed up his things and left. No 2 weeks notice. No goodbye. Just gone. Let's go back to that elevator for a moment, because the 14th floor wasn't the only problem. There were reports from the last remaining tenants, before they all fled, that the elevator had a mind of its own. You'd be standing in the lobby, waiting, and suddenly you'd hear that ding. The doors would slide open. The car would be empty. But if you looked at the panel inside, the buttons would be lit up, randomly. 7, 14, 22, 14 again. Always 14. One tenant, a woman who worked in accounting, said she got into the elevator one afternoon to go to lunch. She pressed the button for the ground floor. The elevator went up instead. It stopped on 14. The doors opened. She said the hallway beyond was wrong. The walls were the same color as the rest of the building. Cream with dark wood trim, but they were wet, glistening, like they were sweating. And there was a sound. A low hum, not mechanical, organic, like breathing. She didn't step out. She pressed the closed door button over and over, sobbing until the elevator finally obeyed. When she got to the lobby, she quit on the spot. She said she could still hear that hum in her sleep. The building was fully abandoned by the end of 2007. No tenants, no staff, just an empty tower, slowly sinking into the soft Jakarta soil, tilting slightly to one side like it's trying to bow under the weight of whatever is inside. So what happened here? Why did a brand new, expensive modern skyscraper become uninhabitable within months? In Indonesian mysticism, especially in Javanese tradition, there's a concept called Tanah Sangar. It translates roughly to cursed ground. These are places where the spiritual veil is naturally thin, where the boundary between the living world and the world of the dead is fragile. Sometimes it's because of geography, certain areas near water or built on old burial sites. Sometimes it's because of history, places where violence, betrayal, or tragedy occurred. Menara Saidah, according to local elders, was built on Tanah Sangar. Some say the land was once a cemetery during the Dutch colonial period. Others say it was a site of execution during the Japanese occupation. Either way, the ground was never clean. In traditional belief, Before you build on such land, you must ask permission. You perform rituals. You make offerings. You invite a dukun, a spiritual practitioner, to cleanse the site and negotiate with whatever spirits are already there. You acknowledge them. You respect them. If you don't, if you just bulldoze through and build your steel and glass tower without so much as a whisper of respect, then you're not building a skyscraper. You're building a trap. Here's the thing about spirits. They don't like being ignored, and they hate being displaced. When Menara Saidah went up, it didn't just cover the land. It sealed it. All that spiritual energy, angry, restless, confused, had nowhere to go. So it stayed. It pooled. It waited. And then when the building opened and people started moving in, the spirits had something they hadn't had in years. Company. There's another concept at play here. In Chinese and Indonesian folklore, an empty building is like an open door. Spirits are drawn to vacancy. They're searching for shelter, for warmth, for a place to exist. A 28-story empty building? That's not just an open door. That's a mansion. This is what we call the empty vessel phenomenon. The longer a building sits empty, the more it attracts, not just the spirits that were there originally, but wandering ones, lost ones, angry ones. They move in. They claim floors, rooms, corners. They make it theirs. And once a place reaches a certain spiritual density, it becomes nearly impossible to cleanse. And that woman in red, the one in the window, she's the anchor. In Chinese folklore, there's a specific type of spirit called a legwei, a vengeful ghost, usually female, who dies in a state of extreme emotion, sorrow, betrayal, and she dies wearing red, the color of fire, of blood, of unresolved yang energy. Her spirit doesn't fade. It burns. Red is significant. In many Asian cultures, red is the color of life, of celebration, of weddings. But it's also the color of fury. When someone dies in red, especially a woman who died unjustly or violently, her spirit becomes trapped in a loop of that final emotion. She can't move on. She won't move on. She becomes a legwei. The woman in red at Menara Saidah fits this profile perfectly. No one knows who she is. No one knows how she died. But the fact that she appears again and again, always in red, always silent, always watching, that tells you everything you need to know. She's not haunting the building. She is the building. Her energy is woven into the steel, the concrete, the wiring. As long as she's there, the building will never be sold, never demolished, never repurposed. It will just stand there, tilting slowly, sinking into the cursed ground it was built on. A monument to the arrogance of ignoring the dead. Let's talk about something that should be normal. Something safe. Let's talk about malls. If you've spent any time in Indonesia, you know that malls aren't just shopping centers. They're social hubs. They're sanctuaries from the heat. The air conditioning alone is worth the trip. You go there to eat, to meet friends, to window shop, to let your kids run around in the play area while you sip iced coffee and check your phone. Malls are safe. Malls are bright. Malls are normal. Unless you're talking about Mall Klender, also known as Yogya Plaza. This mall sits in East Jakarta. And if you ask the locals, especially the older generation, they'll tell you the same thing. Don't go there after dark. Don't go alone. And whatever you do, don't linger in the stairwells. Because this mall isn't just a place where people shop. It's a place where people died. Hundreds of them, burned alive, trapped, screaming, and they never left. I need you to understand the context first. In May 1998, Indonesia was in chaos. Economic collapse, political unrest, riots sweeping through Jakarta. Buildings were burning. Stores were being looted. It was a time of fear, anger, and violence. On May 14th, a mob surrounded Mall Klender. It's unclear who started the fire. Some say it was deliberate. Others say it was accidental. A Molotov cocktail thrown through a window, catching on the curtains. spreading faster than anyone expected. What is clear is this: the fire spread through the mall while hundreds of people were still inside. Families, employees, shoppers, people who had come for groceries, for clothes, for a moment of normalcy in the middle of chaos. And suddenly, they were trapped. The exits were blocked. Some say the metal shutters came down automatically when the fire alarms went off, sealing people in. Others say the crowd outside prevented anyone from leaving. Either way, the result was the same. Over 400 people died. Some from smoke inhalation, some from burns. Some were trampled in the panic. Mothers shielded their children. Elderly people collapsed in the aisles. Employees tried to lead people to safety and died alongside them. The bodies were found days later. Some were burned beyond recognition. Some were found in stairwells, piled on top of each other, their hands still reaching for the doors. Some were found in the bathrooms, where they tried to wet towels and cover their faces, hoping the smoke wouldn't reach them. It did. The mall was rebuilt, renovated. The walls were repainted. New tiles were laid. New shops moved in. By 2000, it was open for business again. Clean, bright, modern, but something was wrong. Customers started reporting experiences. Small things at first. A cold spot in the middle of the clothing section, even though the AC wasn't pointing there. The smell of smoke in the food court, even though nothing was burning. The sound of footsteps on the upper floors, even when the stores were closed. But then the experiences became more specific, more disturbing. A young woman, let's call her Sari, went shopping at Mall Klender one afternoon. She was looking for a dress for her cousin's wedding. She found one she liked, took it into the changing room, and closed the curtain. The changing room was small. A mirror on one wall, a hook for clothes, a wooden bench. Normal. She pulled the dress over her head, adjusted it, and turned to look in the mirror. There was someone standing behind her. A figure. Blackened. Burnt. The skin was peeling. Cracked. Like charred wood. The face was gone. Just a hollow, featureless mask of ash. But it was standing there, right behind her, close enough to touch. Sari screamed. She spun around. The changing room was empty. She tore the curtain open and ran. She didn't pay for the dress. She didn't even change back into her own clothes. She just ran, still wearing the wedding dress, out of the store, out of the mall, and into the parking lot, sobbing. Public transport drivers in Jakarta have a reputation for being tough. They've seen it all. Drunk passengers, street fights, traffic. That would make anyone lose their mind. But there's one thing that makes even the toughest angkot driver refuse a fare. A passenger who gets on near Mall Klender after dark. One driver, Pak Agus, told this story to a local radio show in 2015. He said he was driving his usual route one night around 10 p.m. He was passing by Mall Klender when he saw a woman standing at the bus stop, waving him down. She was young, mid-20s, wearing a batik dress and carrying a shopping bag. She looked normal, but a little tired. Pak Agus asked her where she was going. She pointed straight ahead. He shrugged and started driving. After about 10 minutes, he glanced in the rearview mirror to ask her again where she wanted to get off. No answer. He tried again. Miss? Still nothing. He pulled over, turned around, and did. She was gone. The seat was empty, and the entire car smelled like smoke. Not cigarette smoke, not engine smoke. The thick, choking smell of burning plastic and flesh. Pak Agus got out of the car and vomited on the side of the road. He said he could still smell it for weeks afterward. No matter how many times he cleaned the car, he doesn't drive past Mall Klender anymore. Not after dark. Not ever. Cashiers working the evening shift have their own stories. It's always the same pattern. A customer approaches the register. They're holding items. They place them on the counter. The cashier rings them up. The customer pays. The cashier hands them the receipt. And then, in the space of a blink, the customer is gone. Not walked away. Not turned around. Gone. like they were never there. But the transaction is still in the system. The receipt is still in the cashier's hand. The money is in the register. One cashier said it happened to her 3 times in 1 month. Always around closing time. Always the same type of customer. Quiet. Pale. Holding just 1 or 2 items. She said the 3rd time it happened, she looked down at the receipt still in her hand and noticed something. The items the customer had bought were a lighter, a bottle of water, a pack of tissues. The same items. She realized that someone might grab if they were trying to survive a fire. She quit the next day. So what is happening at Mall Klender? Why, after more than 20 years, are the dead still shopping? This is what I call cumulative spiritual trauma. When a large number of people die in the same place, at the same time, in a state of extreme fear or suffering, their collective energy doesn't just dissipate. It collapses inward. It creates a kind of spiritual gravity well that traps not just the spirits of the dead, but the emotional energy of their final moments. In Chinese and Indonesian metaphysics, we talk about yin energy, the energy of death, cold, stillness, sorrow. When 400 people die in terror, the yin energy produced is immense. It saturates the space. It soaks into the walls, the floors, the foundations. And here's the worst part. Most of those spirits don't know they're dead. Think about it. You're shopping. You're picking out vegetables, or looking at shoes, or standing in line at the food court. And then suddenly there's smoke, panic, screaming. You're trying to find the exit. You're calling for your family. You're coughing, choking, crawling. And then, nothing. You wake up. You're still in the mall. It's quiet now. Clean. Bright. Other people are walking around. So you keep shopping. Because what else are you supposed to do? This is called a loop. The spirits are trapped in a repeated moment, trying to finish what they started. Trying to buy their groceries, trying to find their children, trying to leave. But they can't, because their story ended in fire, and fire doesn't leave room for closure. This is why the burnt figures appear in mirrors, why the angkot passengers vanish, why the cashiers ring up phantom sales. The dead are still trying to live, and the living are walking through a graveyard disguised as a mall. In traditional belief, strong emotions can stain a place. Not metaphorically, literally. The terror, the pain, the desperation, it gets absorbed. The concrete remembers. The tiles remember. The air itself becomes heavy with it. And when you walk through that space, even if you don't believe in ghosts, you feel it. A tightness in your chest, a sudden wave of sadness, the urge to leave, even though you don't know why. That's not your imagination. That's yin resonance. Your living energy is reacting to the weight of all that death. So, Indonesian horror family, what have we learned tonight? We've learned that Menara Saidah stands empty, not because of bad planning or a financial collapse, but because it was built on cursed ground without permission, without respect. And now it's haunted by a woman in red whose rage keeps the building frozen in time. We've learned that Mall Klender is not just a shopping center, but a mass grave disguised as a place of commerce, where 400 spirits are still trapped in a loop, still trying to finish their shopping, still searching for the exits they never found. These places are not just haunted, they are unfinished. The victims, whether they died in an empty skyscraper or in flames, never got justice, never got closure, never got to say goodbye. And so they remain, waiting, hoping, haunting. If you ever visit these places, I beg you, approach them with respect. Don't mock. Don't provoke. Don't treat them like attractions. These are graveyards without headstones. These are monuments to pain. And if you're carrying something heavy tonight, grief, anger, loneliness, fear, please don't walk that road alone. Reach out. Talk to someone. Your story isn't finished yet. And I want you here to see how it ends. Thank you, Indonesian horror family, for staying with me through this heavy episode. I'll see you next week. Stay grounded, stay respectful, and good night.